We are gathered here for our CEF and EPNI Geothermal Energy webinar to discuss survey results that we found in our neighborhood-wide geothermal energy survey and explore CEF's work on cooperative energy and what that could potentially look like in East Phillips. We will start out with some introductions. I'm Sean, he, him pronouns. I'm the Community Outreach Director at EPNI, and my work in conjunction with my team is all about meeting people where they're at, making sure that the members of East Phillips and residents are kept up to date and have their questions, comments, and concerns reflected along every step of the decision-making process as we steward this really exciting project that is the East Phillips Urban Farm Project. And I'll pass it to Timothy.
Hi, all. I'm Timothy Denner Thomas. I use he, him, his pronouns. I am General Manager at Cooperative Energy Futures, which we'll be talking about in a little bit, and end up doing a bit of financing, a bit of project development, supporting our community outreach team, just a whole lot of different pieces of our work to help our communities own and benefit from local clean energy. And over to you, Darby.
Thanks. Yeah, I'm Darby. I use any pronouns and I am EPNI's communications director. So I'll be here to help direct questions and also make sure that this recording is available on EPNI's YouTube to follow this.
Great. This is a quick overview of our agenda. We just did our welcome and opening, and we will be starting off with an introduction of CEF and Solve It, and discussing an introduction to EPNI and the Urban Farm Project. Then we'll transition into unveiling some survey results, talking about geothermal energy, and end and close with a Q&A session and next steps on how to get plugged in with the work of EPNI and CEF. I'll pass it to Tim.
Yeah, so for those of you who are not already familiar with Cooperative Energy Futures, we're a member-owned business based here in South Minneapolis. Our offices are out of Sabathani, and we've been working for about 15 years to really create a vision of community ownership and local control of how we develop clean energy. A core piece of our strategy and vision is exactly what's right here. Each of us individually, one at a time, trying to make a difference can only do so much. But when we coordinate our action, when we work together at a community level to develop a different type of energy system, we're really able to change around the way that things work. We're a member-owned business. We're a cooperative. We exist to really change who owns, controls, and benefits from energy. We envision a future where people are working together to produce, manage, and use the energy we need to thrive. I'll talk a little bit about our community solar work and then also some of our new work around networked and district ground source heating systems, which we're excited to work with EPNI on. So what we're looking for in this partnership with EPNI, we're already working together on community solar at the East Phillips Urban Farm site, but we're also really excited about the potential of that site for networked or district geothermal systems. And we'll talk a little bit about what that is, but this is really an opportunity to provide heating and cooling for a whole neighborhood, and ultimately to serve as the seeds of a different way that we can keep our homes safe and comfortable without using dirty and polluting energy. And one of the key things that we need to make this vision a reality is what we're calling host or anchor sites, which are locations that have the space to put in these essentially wells that do heat exchange with the ground and aquifers so that we can distribute that heat or in the summer, put heat into that system from homes across our neighborhood. And we've been very excited to work with EPNI on this. To just really briefly go over our work with on community solar, which we are working with EPNI on a project for the East Phillips Urban Farm as well. The core of the community solar model is that you have a large volume of solar panels in a central area, for example, a big commercial roof. And that's able to be much more cost effective and just an easier install than many of our individual homes or apartments. Many individuals in the community can subscribe to a portion of the energy that's produced by that project to offset their utility bills. And then each subscriber's utility bill from Xcel Energy is credited based on how much energy the project generates. So it's a way to benefit from solar, even if you don't own your own roof or can't afford to put solar on your own building. Just a quick comparison between community solar, which is what we're talking about for the East Phillips Urban Farm site, and what you may be familiar with on-site solar. Unlike on-site solar, community solar is available to homeowners and renters. It's really anyone with an electric bill. You don't have to have a good roof for solar. You can live in an apartment building where you don't have your own roof. You can live in a home that has a big tree covering it, all of those sorts of things. There's no physical changes at your home. We're basically just putting energy onto the grid. And the financial model is essentially you're going to pay the co-op monthly for the energy that you subscribe to. There's no upfront cost or investment. And those monthly payments are lower than the savings you get in your utility bill. So it's a financial benefit right away. And there's no debt or other upfront financial obligations. The other main difference is that subscribers to community solar don't receive the solar tax credits the way you would with a rooftop solar array. It's basically a three-part relationship. There's some great resources about community solar hosted on the Clean Energy Resource Team's website that's on the slide. But basically, we are delivering energy to the grid. Xcel Energy agrees to provide bill credits to all the people in the community who are subscribing. And then all of those subscribers make monthly payments to Cooperative Energy Futures as the solar garden operator. And again, those monthly payments are less than the bill credits you receive on your bill. And because we're a co-op, we also share profits with all of our members. Just to give a really quick example, this is a copy of a actual Xcel Energy utility bill. The top part above the blue box probably looks very familiar if you pay Xcel Energy for your electricity. And then the bottom part is really once you're part of a community solar array and it's operational, you'll start to see this bill credit as is shown here. And you can see here in this month, this is basically April into May, the customer was charged about $64 for the electricity they used, but they got a credit of almost $129 for the energy that they produced, so that they actually have a negative balance on their utility bill. And we're happy to talk through the details of how this works when you're in the process of becoming a part of a project, but it's a really good way for people to save money on their energy costs. Who is Cooperative Energy Futures and what do we do with community solar? We at this point have developed, this slide is actually slightly out of date. We are now at 10 projects, almost 9 megawatts of solar. While we're still fairly small in terms of the total amount of community solar in the state, most of that community solar that statewide is serving commercial or industrial customers, not residents. And we're a fairly large portion of the residential community solar, and we're one of the only entities that's actually community owned. So we're estimating well in excess of 60% of the community owned community solar in the state is through our cooperative. This is a really cool analysis that a local organization, they actually work nationwide, but they're based here in Minneapolis, the Institute for Local Self-Reliance, put out that really shows the benefits of the cooperative model. This is comparing two community solar gardens that are otherwise identical, but one of them is cooperatively owned and one of them is outside owned. And you can really see that an externally owned system puts way more of the financial benefits towards lenders and outside investors, where we're able to keep most of that circulating in our community and for people in our neighborhood who are subscribers. But while we've done a lot of community solar, our vision is about so much more than that. One of the things I like to talk about is that here in Minnesota, we spend over $22 billion every year paying for electricity and gas. And right now, most of us, we don't really have any choice about where that goes. That goes to big energy utilities that are developing energy in ways that pollutes our communities and harms our climate. How could we do that differently? If we really had the choice as our community, what energy sources, how do we deliver it, how would we manage it, would we want to use? How would we make those decisions? Who gets to own and benefit from those industries? How do we ensure that our communities are protected when there's economic shocks or climate shocks? And how do we survive and thrive, as a society as a whole through our energy? So these are the questions that we'd like to bring to all the work that we do, and we're very excited to be working with the East Phillips Urban Farm on how to apply that now with district energy. Sean, you're on mute actually.
Let me unmute myself.
There you go.
You're unmuted and you're on the Solve It Prize slide, so you're doing great.
And I don't think I'm sharing.
You are sharing.
Yes, you are sharing.
Okay, it was paused for me for some reason. Excellent. Okay. Yeah, a little bit about the Solve It Prize. The Solutions for Lasting Viable Energy Infrastructure Technologies Prize aims to empower communities to develop and implement, identify innovative clean energy solutions that work for each respective community. So the Solve It Prize is the mechanism, the vehicle in which EPNI and CEF, alongside a cohort of other organizations in the Twin Cities Metro, specifically in Minneapolis, are able to do this community outreach work. We've been engaging our own respective bases to see where exactly in Minneapolis, what corner of the city would be good for a viable anchor or host site. So yeah, the Solve It Prize allows for clean energy technologies to be identified, adopted, implemented, and make tangible, active, substantive changes in communities that are often under-resourced and lack that infrastructure. Darby, I'll pass it to you.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, so a little bit about the East Phillips Urban Farm project, just to recap, is that the East Phillips community is converting this vacant warehouse that sits right in the heart of East Phillips into an indoor urban farm and community hub. It's been a project that people have been working on and dreaming about for the last 10 years, since the Roof Depot warehouse went up for sale in 2014. And I think, yeah, you can go on to the next one, Sean. That's great. And the history of East Phillips is that it's a neighborhood that for generations has had the city of Minneapolis and industrial polluters kind of concentrating a lot of heavy industry in this residential neighborhood. So it was a very long time ago zoned for heavy industrial use, and that has resulted in 3 different highways that are very close proximity to East Phillips. There's also foundry, a metal working facility, and there's a roofing company, all sorts of other polluters that are in this neighborhood or have been in this neighborhood. There's also been a long legacy of resistance against adding more pollution to this neighborhood, and that's what this fight for the urban farm is part of the long lineage of, because neighbors are really not content with all of the health issues and quality of life issues that come from really concentrated air pollution in their neighborhood. Yeah, and Sean, you can head to the next one. Thank you. So when this big 7-acre warehouse came up for sale, what you're seeing pictures of are renderings of what we're hoping it will be in the future. Right now, it looks pretty much like a standard warehouse, but it came up for sale, and the neighborhood saw it as an opportunity to bring resources and repair into the neighborhood, because the neighborhood does not have access to a lot of fresh food or well-paying jobs and kind of some other basic things that we need to thrive in our neighborhoods. So they came up with this idea to convert the warehouse into an indoor urban farm. So that means mostly using like hydroponics and aquaponics to produce food year round, as well as using the rest of the space, kind of the south end of the building, for a community hub of small businesses, communal spaces, things of the like. And the East Phillips Neighborhood Institute, EPNI, was formed to receive state funding to kind of build out the plans for this project and secure more funding for years to come. But at the same time, the city of Minneapolis had their own plans for this site. They were hoping to expand a public works facility, which essentially would have involved demolishing the entire Roof Depot warehouse and putting an 800 stall parking garage and pretty intensive diesel refueling station, and just like some other elements of their project that would just worsen local traffic levels and local pollution levels, which are already really dire. So community fought for 10 years. There's lawsuits, protests, marches, all sorts of things over the course of 10 years. If you want to read the whole tale, you can go to epnifarm.org. But in 2023, we won the chance to purchase the Roof Depot site, and 2024 has looked like us focusing on turning this vision into reality by hosting monthly community meetings, workshops in the East Phillips Community Garden. We've been navigating some hurdles this year, some expected, some not so much, and just like working to build out some local partnerships to take this seed and actually turn it into something real.
Yeah, one of those brilliant local partnerships is the one that EPNI has with Cooperative Energy Futures. Again, EPNI wants to bring affordable energy to not only building tenants that will use it for a whole host of different activities inside the Roof Depot building, but also nearby residents. And CEF is and has been rooted in the Minneapolis community and is prioritizing community access, creation, ownership, and wealth, and generating that. And CF has been partnering with local and minority-owned contractors whenever possible, and holds that deep knowledge and experience in working with federal government programs to bring benefits to underserved communities. So, yeah, we have been partnering on a whole host of different grants and securing funding for our partnership with the community-owned solar, and have also been exploring potential geothermal with this Solve It Prize and community outreach effort. A little bit about the solar on the roof. This is still being figured out, but based on the size of the roof has capacity for around 2.6 megawatts of solar. This would produce around 3,300 megawatt hours of solar a year, and that is comparable to energy used by around 400 households. Some schematics here. Again, we are planning to have a cooperative solar array. CEF's portion would be part of the cooperative, so owned by members of the community. Mentioned the megawatt hours generated there. And there is potential for geothermal heating and cooling of the neighborhood through ground sourced energy. This could be built out into a district networked system. The wells will likely be in the current parking lot area of the site. And the building itself, the Roof Depot warehouse, is around 120,000 square feet for indoor aquaponics agriculture to produce everything from vegetables to fish year round. And we're also planning a event to tell the community more about watershed management, rainwater caption, filtration, bioswales, eco restoration, and how the building will interact with and navigate water collection as well. So stay tuned for that during this winter.
Have there
A
anything to
little-
add in there, Timothy, to
Yeah,
that plan? Do you want to fact check us? Are we doing good?
yeah, I think you covered it.
Awesome.
beautiful. Um, a little primer on what exactly geothermal energy is and how it works. So, in the ground, there is thermal energy that is stored and is around the same temperature year round. And geothermal basically uses a network of water-filled pipes to take advantage of that year-round constant temperature. Those pipes and wells are drilled into the ground where there's that stable temperature that will provide a source of heating and cooling. It's around 55 degrees Fahrenheit. So imagine with Minnesota's really cold winters, these water pipes would be able to heat the homes and buildings that they service. In the summertime, when it's really hot out, the constant 55-degree temperature and the piping system would be able to cool the indoor spaces that they're servicing. So again, the geothermal systems transport that heat that is buried um, underground through that piping network that circulates the water. The temperature of the groundwater is used as a heat source during the winter, and so on and so forth. And yeah, little graphic there to showcase that. Geothermal can replace more traditional home heating like natural gas furnaces, and in doing so, saves energy over time. We'll talk more about that in following slides. And there's power in numbers. So district or networked geothermal, which we've referenced a few times, can connect multiple buildings to operate on a single, more efficient system. These pipes are connected to a heat pump that moves heat into or out of a space to warm or cool it based on the needs of that space in the building, the business, or the home. And when you connect all of these different buildings together, um, they operate on that more efficient system with um, each having its own heat exchanger or heat pump. Some things to consider. There is a lot of opportunity in bringing geothermal into uh, old buildings, new developments, district geothermal. It uses very little electricity and is way cheaper than a conventional heating system. It also relies and generates that heat and that cool air from clean energy in the earth. We're not needing to burn a lot of fossil fuels to power a air conditioning unit, for example, or a furnace. It also has a long lifespan. It could last upwards of 75 years or more. There's no outside noise, and it is more efficient than gas heating. Some potential challenges um, are the requirements of having pipes to connect multiple facilities, and it is an additional new piece of equipment in the house or the building. It also could entail a separate energy bill as well. Some more details in the section that comes after this report. But knowing all of this, we were called upon to collaborate and partner with CEF and engage the people that live, work, and play in the East Phillips neighborhood and Little Earth as we know it, and also the greater Southside Green Zone. So we, over the course of around 2 months, did a series of community outreach events and use a variety of tactics to engage with people that are throughout the neighborhood. So we debuted the survey at our biggest event of the year called the Harvest Moon Block Party. This was a huge gathering of community members in Cedar Fields Park. There were hundreds of attendees throughout the day. We also launched the survey across all of our social media platforms. And the outreach team brought printed surveys and physical handouts to high traffic, high density gathering spots across the neighborhood and distributed them out to attendees at 17 internal and external community events. And these were also flyer door to door in Little Earth Residents Association and the stretch of homes that are on Cedar Avenue and adjacent streets. Each interpersonal interaction was unique, and we had brief conversations to give folks a brief overview of what to expect in the survey. The survey handouts had the QR code, and in that month and a half time frame, we got 79 survey responses, with the survey having 4 parts: questions about demographics, energy questions, giving people a brief primer info about geothermal energy, and then asking them specific geothermal questions. So these were the 2 versions of the flyer that were used throughout our outreach efforts. And a quick breakdown: 79 responses, 17 in-person events, 300 plus people that we actually had a physical interpersonal face-to-face conversation with, 200 doors knocked, and 400 flyers given out. Quick list of outreach tactics that we used. These included those printed handouts, office hours where we answered people's questions, partners that we have on our outreach team who are representatives of their own respective local organizations. We also went around, postered, used digital tools, and got the word out through word of mouth. In doing so, we were able to get a third of responses from people that live or work in the East Phillips neighborhood, and 2/3 of responses from people who frequent the East Phillips neighborhood or come through it in some sort of way, maybe for events, maybe for festivals, or another purpose. So that's kind of where the play aspect comes in. We would have hoped to get a higher percentage of people from the East Phillips neighborhood, but through the variety of tactics that we used, got the word out to the best of our ability, and hope to keep through events like this, digital and in-person events, continue to reach people that live in Little Earth and East Phillips. We also got a detailed breakdown of if someone did not live in East Phillips, where they live in the city of Minneapolis. So we got a bulk of our responses from within the Southside Green Zone and South Minneapolis and other parts of Minneapolis as a whole. Only 4 responses came from outside of the city of Minneapolis. And these are all broken down by neighborhood names. Continuing on with demographic info, the majority of people who responded were 25 to 64, and these are broken down by different categories there. And an overwhelming amount of folks were identified as white or Caucasian, and this was followed by Native American, which we can attribute to our intentional outreach in the Little Earth Residents Association and the LIRA 411 page. And in terms of gender identity, the bulk of folks were identified as female, followed by male, genderqueer, and non-binary. And the number of people living in each household for the respondents, the majority of folks either had 1, 2, or 3 people in the household. In terms of whether or not people rented or owned their homes, the majority did own their homes. This was followed by people that rent. There were also different responses around living in cooperative housing with their families or in housing complexes. And for income, the majority of folks that took the survey had a household joint income of $60,000 to $120,000. Now we're transitioning into general questions on energy and people's energy access. Overwhelmingly, the top concern that people had with their current energy access today, whether that be electricity, heating, or cooling, was the increase in cost. We saw that resoundingly throughout the survey. People said they had concerns about their energy not being from a clean energy source and the need for decarbonization. People also really wanted renewable options. And we have a section of notes and trends here on the side. And given climate change, we see even more nuance here in what people were concerned about. People were concerned about the need to transition away from fossil fuels and away from greenhouse gases. People were concerned about the increase in severity around weather events, increased costs associated with that, and the need for sustainable options. And hotter summers in Minnesota was something that was of note. When asked where people are getting their information around energy, a lot of people go to trusted relationships that they hold in friendships and their family members or neighbors, using their own research online, so a simple web search, or contacting their local energy provider or property manager or landlord. We also have a wide array of other places that people seek information, including their tenants union, maybe a local organization that does work around energy, or other sources of news media. And when asked if they could change one thing, what that would be around their current energy system, it would be speeding up the transition and move towards 100% green, renewable, sustainable energy, followed by shared cooperative ownership. So that was really exciting, that was the trend. And folks also mentioned a decentralized, more local distributed system. And moving out of general energy questions and towards geothermal questions, overwhelmingly people said that they were interested in bringing geothermal to their neighborhood. We have some other observations here. So yeah, it would be important to have geothermal to help cool during the summer and heat indoor spaces during the cold winters that we have here in Minnesota. And in terms of how access to geothermal can change the energy future of the respondents, people said that it was key to a green energy future. It's key to lowering energy costs. It's key to our transition away from fossil fuels. And people want to prioritize geothermal. So on this kind of gradient here, we have number one, make it a top priority. And at the bottom there, uncertainty or not sure, not enough info. The bulk of people said they would either make it a top priority, a high priority, or equally mix it with other sources of green energy like solar, wind, water. Yeah. Going into what concerns people have about geothermal, folks were skeptical or had questions that they wanted answers to regarding the initial upfront cost of installation of a system. And there were quite a few people who had no concerns. Some also had concerns around environmental impacts of construction and soil disturbance, which we will get to in our Q&A session. There were some other unique concerns that people wrote down. Yeah, just to read out a few, upkeep to pipe infrastructure, questions around how they will own it, questions around pushback from current oil interests. And other than geothermal, potential solutions that people were excited about, that was solar, number one, which is good that we have solar as a big aspect of this project, followed by wind, weatherization and insulation of buildings, and then hydropower. And asking folks about an anchor or host site. So this would be a site that is a larger building that could house the well, and how we can choose or select that kind of building. Folks recommended that Lyra could be one, that The East Phillips Farm project could be one, public school buildings, park facilities and buildings, public libraries and whatnot. Other unique considerations that people wanted us to take into account, making sure that the building serves the community, making sure that the um, density of nearby consumers is taken into account, and things like population, space, efficiency, and finding a site that works deeply with the community. Other considerations, so this is an aggregate of the long form responses that people were typing and sending in to us. We were able to come up with a list of 7 considerations, and these include land use, ownership, and land availability, how we are engaging with the community and stakeholders, economic viability, and so on and so forth. And we also wanted to know who the community and who members who were taking the community members and neighbors who were taking the survey wanted to see prioritized out of all the members of the community in receiving benefits from a geothermal project. Resoundingly, people said that they want this technology to benefit people who are under-resourced, energy cost burdened, low income in our neighborhood. People also want the potential anchor site to be rooted in a green zone, whether that be the north side or south side green zone, sacrificial zones in urban planning, as a form of reparations for those impacted by pollution who have been historically marginalized, and also serving people who are renters, tenants, and yeah, minorities as well. And 10 people said it should equally service everyone in the neighborhood as a whole. And kind of, again, using that system of aggregating long form responses that we were getting in paragraph form, we found 9 kind of different categories of community members to prioritize, including the local indigenous community, low income folks, the workforce and small businesses, um, public institutions, environmental conservation organizations, youth serving institutions, and so on. And that brings us to our question and answer portion. Tim and Darby, anything to chime in on before we start questions?
No, well, to say that, yeah, some of these questions are questions that we've heard at tabling, or folks who submitted questions ahead of this webinar. So we'll just run through them. And then at the end of this presentation, we're going to be going through a couple different ways that folks can stay involved with both CEF and with EPNI. So if you have further questions that you don't see answered here, please feel free to reach out. We'd love to connect. And yeah, I could run through the questions, Sean, unless you want to, like, then you and or Tim could answer. I could pose them if that's helpful.
Yeah. And I think we started to type up a brief response to each question, but absolutely would love for Tim or myself to continue to elaborate, and we can each answer the questions to the best of our abilities. Yeah.
Yeah, the first one that we had up was, how is geothermal energy healthier or safer than other alternatives?
I can jump in here. It's something that I think for many decades wasn't being talked about very much, but having gas burning in our homes is actually a really major source of health impact in our community. Um, it's common in many homes, especially if there's not really good ventilation, for the indoor air quality to actually be worse than the outdoor air quality. And the primary cause of that is burning, particularly of gas in our homes. So gas stoves and sometimes poorly ventilated furnaces are one of the leading causes of asthma in our community. And so by reducing or ideally even eliminating the burning of gas in our homes, geothermal can be a really powerful way to reduce indoor air pollution and improve health and reduce asthma and other respiratory issues.
Cool. Yeah, and then we had another one that was how can geothermal ensure climate resilient infrastructure? Maybe kind of like how is it an example of climate resilient infrastructure? Is maybe a better way to phrase that one.
Yeah, so one of the things that's really cool about a geothermal energy system is that it actually can be a full solution for heating and cooling in our climate. Most other alternatives, they'll do a lot, but you still need some kind of backup, which would usually be a gas furnace. And when you still have gas furnaces, even if they're using a lot less fuel over the course of the year, like if you had air source heat pumps or something, you still have to maintain all the pipes. And there's a major concern in kind of our energy future if we've dramatically reduced how much gas we're using, but we still have to pay for all the same pipes all throughout our neighborhood. That essentially, because of how utilities work and how energy utilities are regulated, that means that the price of energy will go up because you're trying to cover the same infrastructure costs that we all have to pay for with a much lower volume of energy use. And so really the only way to get out of that kind of problem cycle that we're facing is if we can actually strategically stop investing in and maintaining certain parts of that gas distribution network, which is only possible if in a geographically coordinated way we have large areas that don't need it anymore. And geothermal energy systems are the the best thing that I've heard of, and I think the best thing that most people in kind of cold climates like Minnesota are finding right now that actually enables us to do that, that enables us as at a whole neighborhood level to get off of gas and not have to keep spending and paying for all that infrastructure and piping.
Yeah. One thing that we heard when engaging with members of the community, tabling at events time and time again was, and throughout the survey, was a concern around dilapidated infrastructure throughout the neighborhood, whether that was old power lines, old gas lines. And with your traditional furnace, it typically would last around 20 years, but you do start to see problems a decade in at 10 years. And with geothermal, it typically would last 75 to 100 years, which is 5 times the lifespan of your traditional gas furnace in a house as well. So yeah, there have been concerns around like how does the current energy grid or the system hold up as we get an influx of severe weather events? Are we making sure that our infrastructure is equipped to handle that? And how can we build towards climate resilient infrastructure? So I think geothermal is an excellent part of the toolbox in our tools there.
Yeah, I think like the next question that we had was kind of how related to that of being like, could geothermal energy lead to more affordable energy in the long term, which you all kind of touched on in the last one anyways. So I feel like we could add to it or we could go on to the next one, whatever.
I think the only thing I would add here is just because geothermal energy really doesn't, you don't have to burn fuel and you have to use very little electricity to run the heat pumps. There's just not a lot of cost once you built the system.
Mhm.
Most of what you're paying for, if you're paying for geothermal energy on a monthly basis, is just paying off the upfront cost to build it. And then once that's paid off, there's a little bit of cost, but nearly free actual operation, because that energy is just there right there below us in the ground.
Mhm. Cool. Yeah, and then this is a common one that we hear too, because when we were fighting to stop demolition at the Home Depot warehouse, there was a lot of concern over the city not maybe taking seriously residents' concerns about disturbing soil in East Phillips because there's been so much heavy industry in that neighborhood. So yeah, I'm guessing that this is probably like a long topic that we would get into more if like East Phillips is chosen as a site. But like, what can you all tell us right now about, yeah, what is going to happen with the soil if something like this were to move through at the Roof Depot site?
This is a really important question, and it's something that we're still exploring with Darcy Solutions and other geothermal energy system providers. One of the things that's important to note is that unlike, if you were demolishing and rebuilding the building where you'd be moving around soil over like a massive area of the whole site, the actual geothermal wells are pretty small. They're like, a roughly 12-inch diameter pipe that's just going straight down. So it is an important thing that we have to evaluate and make sure that we're not running into toxic soil and displacing that and creating disturbance there. But it is a much lower impact in most cases than if you're trying to do a whole building demolition and reconstruction.
Mhm.
Yeah, I'm guessing that's probably something that kind of like as we go, we would just EPNI and CEF
Yeah,
would.
there'll be all sorts of feasibility studies on this sort of project, and one of that's going to be looking at the soil disturbance and soil toxicity.
Yeah, and then the last kind of like big theme of question that we've been hearing as we've been talking to neighbors about this is how would it like benefit the neighborhood, maybe beyond just like I think a lot of EPNI's focuses on like the Roof Depot site itself, but how would it benefit East Phillips at large, or could it benefit?
Yeah, essentially, the future to imagine here is one in which, when we're digging up streets or repairing water mains, we're just by default installing geothermal distribution pipes down our streets. So it might start with, a few blocks here and there, but it could steadily be expanded throughout the city. So you can think of the opportunity to put these wells on the East Phillips urban farm site as a place where you are essentially taking thermal energy out of the ground that can then be distributed throughout the neighborhood. So you can use lateral pipes down our streets to then distribute that thermal energy to individual homes and individual businesses. And, really, we would love to see a vision where in the future, this is just like water mains. Everyone has it. But to get to that point, you have to start with some of these anchor sites like the East Phillips Urban Farm that can host the initial systems and then start serving immediate neighbors around that site. And then someday get connected to new sites that are brought online all over the neighborhood and across the city.
Yeah, cool. Thank you. And I think another question that I've heard from folks too is just like curiosity about like how to learn more. Because I know like up next we're gonna talk about how to stay involved with CEF and with EPNI, but is there like any other resources that you recommend folks check out or ways that folks can kind of stay up to date on the expansion of geothermal? Because I feel like it's really not, we don't see much of it.
Yeah, let me actually really quick look up. Yeah, there's a group called the Building Decarbonization Coalition that um, has a whole working group focused on district geothermal systems. And I think they're kind of one of the main places where resources from around the country are being gathered about how this can work and how it can be a solution, particularly for cities. So that's kind of the main one that I'd recommend checking out right now. Darcy Solutions is also a really cool local company that's doing a lot of work on this type of system. Um, District Energy, Evergreen Energy, which runs District Energy St. Paul, is another company that's doing a lot of projects like this, including the Coliseum redevelopment right on East Lake Street. So those are a couple of resources that are helpful for just understanding what this is and what we're talking about.
Sweet. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I think those were our big 5 themes for questions. And Yeah, Darby, I'll pass it back to you on how to get involved.
Sure, yeah, we can tag team this from the EPNI side and the
Mhm.
CEF side. But we were just going to talk through a couple different ways folks can stay involved with EPNI, and then yeah, would love to hear more about how folks can plug into community solar garden efforts that you all have going on right now. Um, we have both of our websites up here at the epnifarm.org website. You can sign up for EPNI's keep saying EPNI and EPNI. I always shorten it to EPNI, but our email list to sign up to get our updates on this effort with district geothermal exploration, as well as everything else that we're doing. We also have a volunteer form linked on our website, so you can find out how to get involved with our outreach team, our communications team, our outdoor farm team, our fundraising team, all the rest. We also have a fundraiser going at the moment, so you can donate to it. That'll be a couple slides later, but those are the main ways to get involved with EPNI. Yeah, Timothy, maybe you can talk about.
Yeah, on the Cooperative Energy Futures side, our website there, on our Join Us page, there's a place to sign up for our newsletter and email list. We are particularly around community outreach. We're also working with volunteers. And then for everyone in the community, we really want everyone to become a member. Being a member of the cooperative is number one, how you get the right to vote or run in our board of directors elections. We're managed by a board that is member elected. And then members, once you participate in a project like subscribing for community solar, by being a member, that's also how you gain access to sharing the profits of the cooperative. And on one of our upcoming slides, we also have some information about how to sign up for our upcoming Midtown Community Solar Garden, which is kind of like a prelude to the work we'll be doing together with EPNI in a year or two when we start signing people up for the project on the East Phillips Urban Farm. So yeah, there's the link to sign up for our community solar gardens. We have a project right now that's going up over the new parking lot that Allina Hospital's built on 28th in Chicago. So that's where that project is.
Yeah, and then this is more ways to find out what's going on with EPNI. Some of these pictures are from our Harvest Moon block party that we had back in September. That's some of our social media handles. And the link tree is kind of where you can find a bunch of different resources. We don't have our YouTube on here yet, but we'll be sending that out to everyone who registered for this event and posting it to our big email list as well, just so folks can watch this recording and reference it as we go. And then last up, we're just going to mention that we have a crowdfunder happening right now. Chip in if you can. We're trying to build more community-owned climate resilient infrastructure like what we talked about today, but with the rainwater collection system that we're working on with the Mississippi Watershed Management Organization, as well as the cooperatively owned rooftop solar. So yeah, I think that's pretty much all we got. But as always, yeah, everyone feel free to reach out with more questions. Anything else to add, Sean or Timothy?
That's it on my end.
Yeah, sounds great.
Thank you so much.